Well, welcome to another episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. I'm your host, Big Tom Perkins, along with Dr. Cameron Meyerly. And we kind of figured maybe today we just continue on with our discussion of just getting ready for lambing season.
Yeah, we got a little sidetracked last time. Started talking about some apps, some grazing resources, and that kind of chewed into our time of lambing preparation and some of the things we'd like to have coming up here in the new year.
Yep.
So, what are some essentials for you, Tom, that going into lambing season you have to have, and you really don't want to sit there and wait for it to get shipped to the house?
Well, I don't know. I think we kind of covered everything on the last episode. Like you said, the a tuber or lamb or whatever that's called. It's not called a tuber. What's that called?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just a feeding tube.
Feeding tube, I guess that's what it is. Yeah, a tuber.
Yeah, and
And
if you wanna call it a tuber, I think that's totally fine as long as we know that it's, an
yeah,
actual
I think the other thing
instrument and not
too
a
is
potato.
I know I was really apprehensive about tubing my first lamb, and then after I did it, I was like, "Well, that wasn't that bad at all. That went pretty good." So
Yeah,
I would say maybe get on the YouTube there and find you some videos of how people tube lambs, and I know there's some that are highly technical, and I did watch those, and I kind of used those, but after like the third or fourth lamb that I ever tubed, I quit doing all the technical things, and you kind of figure out, that tube tends to go in there pretty easy. So
right, and just figuring out what works for you. I know, and like you said, I think that's one of those things that just takes practice. You do 2 or 3 of them, and all of a sudden it kinda clicks on how easy it is. I remember we were at a prominent breeder's farm there in Indiana, and this was, growing up. We were looking at some sheep, and he had mentioned that he milks out colostrum on every ewe, and tubes every single lamb within that first 24 hours to make sure that they get colostrum,
yeah,
which to me felt like overkill. And
yeah,
we're dealing with some high dollar sheep, and uh, I understand you don't want to lose that investment, but I don't know that I'm that committed. But we do not hesitate if we've got one that just looks to be lagging behind early on. Um, it's not a situation where we wait. We tube them if we think they need it, and then
mhm,
that they've got food in their belly, and they're hopefully then going to thrive.
yeah.
So, and I think
I
along the
can see from a
line,
management, I can see from a management position how that would be a beneficial thing to do. But at the same time, we're trying to breed sheep here that you shouldn't have to do that.
right, and I think that's the difference. If we wasn't a commercial producer, if we look at what their operation was, their goal wasn't necessarily to breed sheep that would go out and work in a commercial setting.
Yeah,
It was to breed sheep that were going to thrive for exhibition, and to do that, they've got to live past, past those first 24 hours.
yeah,
And again, that young lamb is worth quite a bit of money to salvage that investment that you have in genetics and everything else. I think that was kind of more their thought process, and they know that they're going to receive some colostrum,
hmm,
um, at that a guaranteed amount of colostrum. And I think to the tubing point, one of those essentials in lambing preparation is either having that going into the lambing season knowing you're going to freeze some colostrum. I've talked to a number of producers that every single every ewe that is single bearing, they'll milk out a significant amount of colostrum and freeze it for the season, and they know they're going to do that at the start of that lambing season when they need to tube. They have some natural colostrum produced from those ewes.
yeah. That's
And if
definitely
you
not a
can't do
bad thing to
that,
do. I've seen where people put that colostrum in a ice cube tray so that they can,
Mm,
crack that open and get that stuff melted.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's not too. I mean, that's about the right amount. I'm not sure how many ounces are in an ice cube. Maybe one. I think there's an ounce in your average ice cube.
yeah, I don't know. I've never measured it out to see what it would come
Oh,
out.
neither have I. But I mean, it seems like it would be a nice measurement to move forward with when we have to tube those young lambs. And I think also really paying attention to our bagged colostrum. So that powdered colostrum that we're buying to make sure we have those antibody levels, those immunoglobulin levels that are in there, uh, and that they're in a usable form. But and it's expensive. I know we've purchased some over the years, and it's about the same price as a bag of milk replacer, except you get a
I
little
know, right?
pouch.
Yeah,
And
not much there. Yeah, that's probably something we should do more of as soon as, we're always lambing our mature group first. So they would have, you would think they'd have way more colostrum than, than the lamb, or yeah, than the ewe lambs when they lamb. But
but especially the ones having singles. I
yeah,
think that's a fair assessment to pull some colostrum out of those ewes. We're not draining them,
no,
but we're pulling enough out that for every one ewe that has a single, can I feed two or three lambs
yeah,
that need that colostrum early on, and could be a significant savings
hmm,
uh, in that. Now, if you're going to milk those ewes out, are you milking them out by hand, or
oh yeah,
do you use a product? I know at WVU we had one of those easy milkers. I think it's an utterly easy
yeah,
milker where it's
yeah.
a pump, just a hand pump, creates a vacuum in there. And I
Did
did
yours
not.
work well?
What was it?
Did yours work well?
No,
No, you see, that was
ours.
kind of what I saw one of those. Somebody was talking about it, and I was like, "Holy cats, I ought to get one of those." And then you started looking at some other conversations that were going around them, and it was like you needed different size cups or something like that. You had to match it
I
perfect,
I
and
don't know. All I know is on those Texel use did not work well. And I've talked to people, just what you're saying. I've talked to people that absolutely love them
yeah,
and swear by them. And I never had I was always nervous of creating more trauma to the teat
yeah,
with the suction aspect, because we know in the dairy industry
yeah,
the
oh yeah.
relationship of trauma to that teat, and then its relationship to mastitis or
It's
nip.
funny because CJ, I'll hold a you. CJ will try to milk her. He's taking forever, and then we switched, and I just fill a cup up really fast. I don't
Yeah,
know. That's because I grew up a dairy farmer. I don't know. you
yeah,
know,
maybe that's what it.
I
Yeah,
guess I don't
and
know. I just don't usually seem to have trouble getting milk out of them. Quite often I'm just here alone. I'll put a halter on that ewe and just tie her in a corner and kind of put my shoulder up against her and hold her. And a lot of times I put my head in her side. Just like a dairy farmer, I guess. I put my
right.
head
Yep.
in her side, kind of hold her there, and she'll be jumping around, and you just kind of keep following that teat and just keep working at her. And
And
but
maybe we've talked about that previously. When you guys were milking cows, or maybe you had a story of somebody else that they were over milking
oh yeah,
cows,
yeah, I worked for
and
a
it.
farm um, that they had a bottling plant there, and we always had these. They milked 130, 140 cows. We always had these garbage cans full of mastitic milk that we'd end up feeding to calves, and then they got an automatic remover, I guess, on their milking system. That once that milk flow stopped, it just shut
Oh,
the
an automatic release
yes,
so
it
that the
shut, it shut
contraption
the
would
vacuum
actually.
off, right,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
would retract the milker. And I mean, within 2 weeks, that we had to start buying milk replacer because we didn't have the mastitis that we had before because we weren't over milking.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Well, with
that
those
to me is
ewes, as I'm milking them by hand, as soon as that milk flow stops, and I'll bump that udder a few times, but just like a lamb does. But
right.
um, that milk flow stops, so I stop. But I usually don't ever milk a side out, far enough for it to stop.
Right. There's a lot of things that go into that to mastitis and just utter care. It's not all. It's important to keep that barn clean, but it's not all about cleanliness at the end of the day on that. Um, it certainly helps, but that's always been my concern with that contraption was we would put a significant amount of pressure on
Yeah.
that teat, suction on that teat, and it was faster for me to milk her out by hand, and so we kind of tossed it
Yeah,
off to the side
we
and
were
said, "We're
told we were told back then that it's the inflammation of that teat canal, and that all swells and opens much bigger than it normally does, and stays open longer than it normally does, and that's how bacteria can be introduced to that teat canal.
right,"
And
which would make sense.
it was usually some type of a staphylococcus, I think. I'm probably saying that wrong now, but um, bacteria that was getting into there and causing issues with it. But yeah, we so that was kind of my concern too. A lot of people just had trouble getting that utterly milk or whatever the thing was called to kind of get it to line up and to work properly, and it has to seat just ever so correctly, or it's not going to create the vacuum it wants to create. And I just figured by the time I went through all that, I could have you milked out. I
Right.
wasn't worried about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, there's plenty of people that swear by them, absolutely love them, and I think if we found something that worked kinda in a foolproof manner, we'd be all over it, but, yeah, it's
I'm
something
only
that
milking out like 4 or 5 ounces. That doesn't take that
yeah,
long to do.
it does not, and ideally, unless we're moving towards a plan of freezing some of that colostrum, my hope is to not milk very many out. As you had mentioned earlier, my hope is that those lambs get up and do the job that
Yeah,
they're
and I don't
supposed to do.
yeah, I only
So,
do that if, like I say, if it's a ewe, I have to tube. Um, I probably should check them more often than I do. And maybe
yeah,
that's the other thing you could be doing, coming up on your lambing is you would have thought you would have already checked udders and know who you need to be keeping an eye on kind of thing. But, 'cause we kinda covered last time all the meds we thought we should have. Was there anything else you thought we should have? We were gonna try to have a little Bosie on hand this year. I don't know. I
yeah,
talked to
yeah.
people that every lamb born they they dose with Bosie.
Right, yeah, and we're hitting them with some Bosie there at that 24-hour or before 24 hours of age. The big things that I think we had mentioned last time, making sure we have lube on hand, making sure, and I did actually check and uh, had mentioned when we were out ultrasounding, it's like, well, if you hear me say on the podcast that we don't pull very many lambs and my gallon of lube is only an eighth of the way empty. When I
Yeah.
pulled it out of the cupboard, I think it was even less than that. So it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
just so you know, I'm not, exaggerating on this.
Okay.
It was a funny conversation, but making sure we have those OB sleeves on hand in that box, sealed up, not dusty, in a as close to sterile as we
Yeah.
can get it out in the barn, and then I think another thing that again we haven't used a lot of times with the commercial use. With the Texel use, we've used it a couple times, but having a lambing snare, so I'm not taking that's easy to clean, or a set of chains, OB chains that you can attach to a leg and use your hand to fish around for a head or assist a head getting through that pelvic opening. That makes all the difference. And I don't have small hands, so I can't even if you do have small hands, I think it's difficult to get two hands in at one
Oh
time,
yeah.
and they're slippery. You know,
Yeah.
that's the difficult thing. So instead of OB chains, it feels excessive, but it's one of those things that to me it's something I can sanitize after the fact, and it's not a piece of twine. It's easy to use. A snare is something to grab a head inside. We've used before to keep that head in line, so we have that normal positioning
Yeah.
of that lamb. And a snare takes up quite a bit less space
Yeah.
than what my hand and forearm does.
Yeah.
So in a tight situation, I can go in, work inside the body of that animal, get that snare around the head, and then, for example, put chains around the feet so I'm not losing the feet, and then just pull with chains and keep that snare in place with that head so that then it's coming out in a normal presentation.
Yeah.
And so those
I don't ever have to do one of those. I can't remember exactly. I just remember that every time I get the feet where I'd want them, and then I go to find that head, I'd lose the feet again. And so I
yeah,
just took a piece of baler
exactly.
twine, plastic baler twine, made a little loop,
Yep,
put it around those feet, just kept a little tension on that with the other hand
right.
until I got that head where I needed it to be, and then that lamb came right out. It was the most amazing thing. I was like, holy smoly!
Yep,
Once
just
you
slipped
lined
right
everything
through.
up,
Yeah,
just slid right out. But so, how did your
yeah,
ultrasound go?
very well. Yeah, it was kind of the ideal timeline. I think we kind of talked about that in the episode of 45 days bred to 60 days bred, and really being able to um, see those fetal counts. We had some sheep that would have been closer, they're probably 80 days to 90 days bred,
Uh,
um and those would have been our terminally sired Katahdin ewes bred to a taxable ram. And those lambs were significantly larger, and so didn't get fetal counts on those. um but it's amazing to me, your eyes just, it becomes trained to a point that you throw the probe on and you're looking at the screen, and just to see the differences between those shortbread versus 45 to 60 day versus 90 day.
yeah,
It was like automatic, and it was fun, uh, just to see like how fast we could get going on these. And I think, um, while we were going through, it probably took longer than what most would in a commercial setting for bred, not bred, and we're trying to get some of those fetal counts. So we ended up with quite a few, like 1+, where they're definitely bred. We can see fetal development here in this individual area, and then to manipulate the probe to where it needs to go wasn't worth the time. Or you just catch a glimpse of a second one over here, but it wasn't fully confirmed that they had two. And so it ended up being a 1+ on the sheet.
uh,
But there were a couple others. There was one that it was like the third ewe we had done that was like, we're pretty sure we saw four
really,
on that. Yeah, on that one. And it's like, man, we'll see. And you're skeptical, and it's like, hey, we're write it down. We'll just call it as you see it, and then we'll go back at lambing,
yeah.
assuming we don't lose any.
See how accurate you are.
Yeah, we don't slip any. We'll go back and see. Okay, that one that was a 2+ had triplets. So
Yeah,
like you did see
yeah.
three in there.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, it was a good time, and uh, it went very. I'd say it was very smooth. Probably more manhandling of the sheep than what we would like.
Yeah,
Um, but I was the one doing it, so I'm not going to complain. And you just get them, pull them out of the chute, get them backed up to where they need to be, and make sure that the person ultrasounding is moving as little as possible
Yeah.
because we want to. The goal is to make it as convenient as possible.
So now
Um,
are you gonna break those into all those ewes into different groups and feed them according to what the ultrasound said, or
so I don't think we'll do. I don't think we'll do that um, based on the fetal counts, because there were the bulk. I would say if we were like you'd probably even say it was more normally distributed. We only had a handful that only had one
okay,
confirmed one. Like we felt pretty confident that there's only one in there. You look at her and you say, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." Or there was a reason. There was a ewe um, that was purchased, came in from another farm, got bottle jaw in during the breeding season,
oh,
pulled her out, got her treated, um, and then threw her in with a ram shortly after. After she recovered, we got some weight back on her. She only had one. And
yeah,
so there were some situations when you know who it is that you say, okay, well, I'm not surprised
yeah,
that you're only going to have uh, a single because of what you went through during breeding season. And so um, that's just one example of like that situation. And then I there's a handful of for sure ones. I'd say the majority are 1+ and 2s, and then another 2+ probably makes up like I another quarter,
okay,
and then just a handful of like 3s. So it's fall, and then that 1/4. And
uh-huh,
again, we'll see what that one showed up on the screen, and it was like you could almost count just without moving anything
huh,
that hard line in between,
yeah,
4 separate individuals. But
huh,
so yeah, we probably will not go um, and change management pre-lambing based on the ultrasound. What we will do, though, I think, is once we're looking at if we get some more years of data of doing this and we know that we're pretty accurate in collecting this, we could start to look at some changes in management. Um, but again, this is the first year we've done ultrasounds, and it again since I've had the weather type used. So, and we mentioned in that episode those were not terribly accurate. So,
yeah,
so, um, but I feel good about the bred not bred. I think we had 2 open out of the 75, so it wasn't a bad day by any means.
oh, good,
And yeah, and I think we will, as mentioned before, we'll probably wait until those lamb and then make our decisions on what we want to do with those triplet bearing ewes,
uh-huh,
um, to see if we can manage those in a fashion that's better for those ewes and for those lambs. But we'll see. So
so can you think of anything else you're gonna need before lambing? I know we need to load up on CD&T. We're
yeah, that would be.
I kinda
Are you
went to
going
the cupboard and
CD&T
looked, and I'm
or
like, "Oh, I don't have anywhere near as much as I thought I did,"
yeah?
so,
Are you going CDT or are you going Covexin?
no, probably CD&T.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I have a bunch of Covaxinate.
Oh, do you really?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but we started to use it, and, man, we just got lump after lump after lump, and then I started hearing all the horror stories that those lumps can then turn to abscesses, and I was like, "Oh, geez, I don't wanna deal with it." So it just basically scared me, and so I just didn't
Yeah.
just didn't do it. Although I know tons of people that use it, and they're like, "We never have any problems with it," so I don't
Yeah,
know.
we went through and did all of the U's last year and all of the U lambs. So we should be good for a booster
Mhm.
of Covexinate this winter pre-lambing and carry in some immunity on those lambs through that colostrum, and with the goal of hitting those lambs with Covexinate pre-weaning.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, a good amount of time pre-weaning. But yeah, that's a great example of something in lambing preparation of trying to have some of that passive immunity coming through the ewe to the lamb.
Yep.
And we know that 4 to 6 week window pre-lambing is when we need to be prepared. I don't necessarily need my ear tags here 4 to 6 weeks before lambing, but I do need my
Well,
vaccines here.
one thing
To
I
get
tell you about the ear tags, there was one year where we had a heck of a time getting ear tags,
really,
and well, it just seemed like everybody was just. It was after. Honestly, I think it was before COVID. Um, I know during COVID, everybody had trouble getting anything, but I think it was before COVID, and we just kind of thought maybe we just need to order them earlier. Like, I don't know if everybody ordered them at the same time, and that was suddenly everything was back ordered.
shortage, yeah, right,
So we kind of went. So now I've been trying to order ahead of time, and usually I'd have them ordered by now, but and I
yeah,
always end up ordering way more than I need because you're always optimistic. And then I always have a bunch of tags left over, and I'm always thinking, what am I going to do with these tags? And we try to change colors every year. Although every time they lose a tag, we're grabbing one of the old tags and sticking in.
and putting them in,
So it's
right,
not necessarily even the right color on these, kind of thing. But
yep. We're
uh,
right there with you. I do think, we're using quite a bit of, uh, I think the product's called Survive, be similar to Nutri-Drench,
yeah,
and anything, especially when it's cold out. We probably don't need it to the extent this year that we've used it in the past. And is there any, research that goes to backing up the survivability of providing an oral supplement at early stages of life to death loss and improvement? Not that I'm aware of. And it's probably more for the producer to feel good, like, oh man, I'm giving them this fat and energy. I would like to think that it makes a difference, and
yeah. I talked
just
to
giving
somebody
them,
this summer. They said they hit every lamb with that.
yeah. If it's cold, we give a pump or two to lambs just to give them a little extra shot of energy to get them up and going, so that they nurse with some vigor.
Yeah,
And again, my hope is they get up and nurse with some vigor, regardless of
yeah.
what I'm
We-
giving.
Yeah, we've never done that. We always keep some of the what was that, Nutri-Drench or whatever it's called. We always keep
Yeah.
some of that on hand, and we just tend to put that in the water bucket of a ewe that maybe just doesn't look like she's feeling too well.
Okay. Yeah,
And
and that we've
and
used it on some
again,
years
it's highly scientific in our dosage. Um,
with a
we,
pump method.
ours doesn't even have a pump. We just take the cap off and pour some in. And it's
Oh
always like,
no.
don't give her too
Okay.
much. We might need that for some other use. So,
Yep.
and
Nice.
occasionally we'll have a ewe that will do that. She'll drink that entire bucket. So I don't know if
Right.
it's kind of sweet or she just says, "Oh, this is something I really need," or
Just thirsty.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something we'll put an order in for that and make sure it's here before we start lambing. Still need to get my straw purchased and brought in, and hopefully we can find some big squares again. And that's been very convenient for us. Um, and then I think we're gonna look at, and this is getting into the weeds on being prepared for this, but it's something to consider. Is before the end of the year, the goal is to uh, get all of our feed purchased for the lambing season, and then uh, depending on where you're at, if you have a feed mill close to you, most will offer a what they call a grain bank. So the ability to purchase corn from a it used to be that you could buy it from the feed mill, and apparently in Ohio they've cracked down on that. But purchasing that corn from a producer now,
Okay.
having it hauled into that feed mill, and then um, storing it there I mean, it's a nominal payment.
Yeah.
So that's something we're going to try to do, so we make sure that we're we're combating that fluctuating corn market. Because right now I can buy corn for right around 4.50 a bushel.
Okay.
compared to the $6.50 a bushel that I'm paying at the mill. Because when they bought corn, the corn they're giving you right now, when they purchased corn, it was $6.50 a bushel.
Yeah.
And so they have to sell they have to sell all of their 650 bushel corn for $6.50 a bushel.
Yeah.
Before they can start selling you the $4.50 a bushel corn.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I mean, that stuff gets a little tricky. I'm by no means a grain marketer, and I'm sure there will be people that listen to this be like, "Oh, he's got that a little off, and if he would do this, it would be better than doing this." And then there's probably people like, "I didn't even know you could do that."
Well,
So
it'd
it's
be good to hear
something.
from those people. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
send
Yeah,
us an email.
exactly.
Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us how we can buy
Right,
cheaper grain.
right. Yeah, find me the loopholes so I
Yeah.
can get
Yeah. Tell
cheaper
us how to
feed.
fix that.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I've got,
and that's something.
I'm working with our local guy, and I gave him a ration. And I wanted him to put it together and a couple other rations. Give me a number. That's been like 3 weeks. I haven't heard back from him. I don't know.
Oh no.
This is always the way it is with this guy. He's just slow getting stuff done, I guess.
Great.
It
Well,
aggravates me.
hopefully he's not a listener. Maybe he is, and then he can.
Well, I'm
You'll
hoping he is. Like, here's your
you'll
chance. Get it right, or I'm gonna have to call you out on the podcast.
great, great. Oh no, no.
But yeah, I'll have to get a hold of him today and say, what's the hold up? I need those numbers. 'Cause we
Yeah,
want to have, we want to make sure we have that. We're going, like I said, we're going to try to creep feed some this year. And I know there's terminal lambs. I like to put weight on them as quick as I can and get them out the door.
hmm
Because I'm a
yeah. I'm
firm believer.
excited to
Every
see
day they're on
those.
the farm is just a day closer they are to dying on the farm. So
Right,
get them,
right.
get them out the door as quick as possible. But
Yeah,
yeah, well, we're coming up on our time again here. Again, we kind of feel like we just rambled on. Maybe we didn't hit everything we wanted, but
yeah. And I think those are the big ticket items. I feel like we can put a stop to, not a stop, but just a nice ending on being prepared for that lambing season. Again, we've got hopefully a month, 2 months
yeah,
for most individuals. And if you have any lambing questions or topics you think need to be covered, or you'd be curious on hearing that topic covered by somebody else, uh, let us know. And I think the hope is we're gonna roll out some new series here over the next month, 2 months, and really hone in hard uh, on some soil science and soil biology stuff. And but we don't want to forget about the sheep. So certainly, if you have questions, reach out with those, and we'll see if we can get them answered on an episode.
yep. You can do that by you can get directly in touch with me through email there at bigtomperkins@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page. You can go on the Grazing Sheep podcast and you can like and follow, and you can ask your questions on there as well, or just give us some comments. It's been fun. Uh, I kind of upload these episodes to a bunch of different sheep groups, and well, like for the last month, I guess more and more people have been commenting on those, and that's been kind of fun getting on there, having a few little discussions and so on. I'm not real good at typing, so it takes me a while to get all that typed
Get
out.
back.
I'm more like a thumper, just thump, thump, thump instead of that tick, 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 tick kind of a deal. So, but it's been good catching up with you there, Cam, and we'll talk to you later.
You too, Tom. Have a good one.
All right, bye.